Recording, and we can start now. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on our live stream or webinar called Campus Life. My name is Hani, and I am the EducationUSA advisor here in the Czech Republic. And today I have a special guest from St. Francis College, Emily. Hello, Emily.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. St. Francis College is located in Brooklyn, New York. So today we'll be talking about what is it like to live in New York City, in Brooklyn, and all that regarding campus life. So I'll start with just a little bit about Education USA. Yes, perfect, we can switch. Just wanted to say that if this is the first video that you are watching, please, we are here to help high school students mostly who would like to apply to American universities and colleges. We do that completely free of charge, and we provide free and accurate and unbiased information about studying opportunities in the US. So if it's your dream to apply to a college in the United States, it can be the St. Francis College, it can be other colleges or universities, just reach out to me and I'm happy to help. Apart from all of that, on the next slide, you can see that my office is in Prague, sorry. My office is in the Fulbright Commission. I am also available online most of the time. So if you want to reach out, you can do so through advisor@fulbright.cz or also through social media. If you can find us under Education USA Czech, you can easily just DM me and I'm happy to connect with you. If you're closer to Plzeň, Ústí, Olomouc, Brno, Ostrava, you can also visit our American centers or American spaces, and they'll be able to provide some basic advising as well. So otherwise, you can just, contact me, and we can do that either in person in Prague or in Brno or online. That's fine. And what do we do free of charge is those live streams, webinars on different topics. So it's just the easiest way is to follow our social media to know what webinars are going to happen in the future month. We also have a library in Prague. I believe that all of the American spaces, they have a library. So if you are in the process of preparing for your SATs or TOEFL exam, we do have books that you can borrow, and you can boost your preparation process. And we also offer consultations. Again, it can be in person, it can be online, whatever suits you. If you scan the QR code, it will get you to our monthly newsletter that I create every month. It has some useful information about scholarships, about to-do lists for you guys, and just what's happening. And of course, all the information is on social media, Education USA Czech. So this is all about Education USA, and now I'm going to leave the floor to Emily, and we're all going to learn something about campus life in New York City.
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Again, I hope you're all doing well. As we mentioned, I'm coming to you from St. Francis College, located in Brooklyn, New York, the famous New York City. So today I'm going to be talking to all of you about what is it really like to study in New York City, right? One of the most famous cities in the world. But first, I just want to introduce myself. So my name is Emily Dorso. I am the Assistant Director of International Admissions here at St. Francis College. I work with all international undergraduate students interested in studying at our school here in Brooklyn. But I also am originally from New York, so hopefully I have some good insight for you when we start talking about, what is it really like to go to school in New York City? Because we'll talk about this later in the presentation, but there are many, many options for studying in the US. I believe there are over 4,000 accredited schools in the United States. And as you may know, the US is very, very big. It can take almost 6 hours by plane to get from one coast to the other, and you're still in the same country. So it could be really overwhelming. And so that's why today I really want to talk to you about what is it like if you choose to go to a school that's in New York City.
I'm just going to jump in real quick, guys, just a comparison. Emily just said that it can take up to 6 hours to travel across the US. It will take you 8 hours to travel from Prague to New York City. So this, you know, you can compare the distance difference basically.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to point out, right? Because I think people, you know, we're used to hearing, now that we live in such a global world, about all these different countries. And so people hear the US and they think they have a good idea. But when I've traveled abroad, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is the size of the US. The US, just by land mass, is so big. And most of that land mass is populated, right? As opposed to maybe, you know, Canada, where it's huge landmass wise, but a lot of it, there aren't people there. That's not really the US. We're all over. So that's why I think it's good to point out that, you know, you have a lot of options. And if you're someone who really likes being in a city or who has always considered traveling to New York, going to school, going to a college or university in New York City could be a great option for you. And so that's actually what we're going to talk about today. So you'll see here the famous New York City. That picture is actually taken in Brooklyn. It's only it's less than a 10-minute walk from our campus at SFC. And so I'm going to just show you some images to get started, right? So we're so used to seeing New York City in television and movies. So I don't know if any of these shows, now they're a little bit older, ring a bell, but in the top left, you'll see Gossip Girl. That was a television show years ago. Then you'll see How I Met Your Mother. That's another New York City shot. Spider-Man, Spider-Verse. In the background there, that's a famous shot of New York City. Pose is another show that's filmed there. And of course, probably one of the most famous is Sex and the City, very clearly, continually filmed in New York over many, many years. So as I'm talking to you, I'm going to briefly show you this video. This video will show you some images that have appeared in movies over the course of decades, all taking place in New York City, right? So these images you're going to see on the screen as I'm talking to you are images that were filmed in New York. And common things I hear from students and friends that have traveled to New York for the first time. When they come here, they say, I really felt like I was in one of these movies because really, these are the streets. If you come to New York, these are the buildings you're going to see. These are the images you're going to see. So it does give you a really good feel for what it would be like if you decided to come either travel to New York or even get your degree here, right? Maybe you're someone who has always dreamed of seeing these sites in your day-to-day life. So a great option for you could be deciding to get your degree here, right? You're either your 4-year undergraduate degree, for example, or even a graduate degree in the future. So I want to talk more detail about what would it be like to spend your day-to-day here in New York City, and would that be a good fit for you? Because not every student wants to be in a giant city like this. Some people have different preferences, different things they'd like. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm gonna pause this, but this video does go on quite a bit of time, which just goes to show you how famous New York City has been over the years in popular culture.
And I second what you just said, because I visited New York on multiple occasions, and it does feel like being in a movie because the crowds of people, you know, they keep moving all the time, and you really see what I am used to seeing in movies. So for me, it was a dream come true to visit New York for the first time. So yeah.
I'm so glad you had such a good experience. Because yeah, it's a really special place. I really love it, which is why I think a good place to start is sharing a little bit about New York City, right? Providing you with some background. Those images may be familiar to you, but the actual layout may not. So I think a map is always a great place to start. When people hear New York City, what they're typically thinking of is Manhattan, right? And that's that green part that you see right in the center, right? The island of Manhattan. And so, of course, that is a very, very famous part of New York City, but that is not the only part of New York City. New York City is actually made up of what we call 5 boroughs. So 5 boroughs, 5 sections that you see here. So you have in red, the Bronx, in green, Manhattan, in orange, Queens, in yellow, Brooklyn, and in purple, Staten Island. So if you hear someone say like, oh, I'm going to New York City, or this building is in New York City, it can be technically in any of those 5 locations. Also, you'll see in brown, LGA is LaGuardia and JFK. Those are both our airports. If you are flying over from from Europe, really anywhere in Europe, you're going to come to either JFK or Newark, which is in New Jersey. So you're not really going to go to LaGuardia because that's more for domestic flights. But so these are the 5 areas that are going to make up New York City. Some of them you may have heard of and some of them you may not. So for example, the school that I work with, St. Francis College, we're located in Brooklyn, right near Manhattan. So those are some common areas. If you've heard of the New York Yankees, right, the baseball team, the famous team, some movies also, that takes place in the Bronx, right? So just something to point out. Now, New York City is different than New York State, right? So people say, oh, I'm going to New York. You have to remember, New York State is a very big state. The United States is made up of, I hope we know, or maybe not, 50 states. New York is one of them, and New York is very large. You could drive in a car at least 8 hours to get from one side to the other, probably more, depending on traffic and which direction you're going in. So the New York City I showed you is in that circle at the bottom of the screen, right? And the rest of it is in New York State. So you could decide, oh, I want to study in New York, but do you want to be in New York State or do you want to be in New York City? There's a big difference. It's not the same. And then, of course, you have to compare it to the whole US. So in red, you will see where New York State is. And of course, the rest of the white you'll see here is the United States. So we are on the East Coast, typically making it easier for our students from Europe to travel because, as we mentioned, that's only maybe an 8 or 9 hour flight as opposed to getting to California and the West Coast, which is going to take you far much more time. So yeah, a lot of choices. So I want to establish that context because I think it's really important when we're talking about New York City. We're talking about that very, very small part now on this map in red.
I also wanted to point out just a quick something that New York City, even though it's very, very famous, it is not actually the capital city of New York State.
Correct.
So because, I'm mostly dealing with high school students and you guys are going to have to deal with Maturita. And one of the Maturita question is the United States. So, if you are asked, just know that it's not New York City, it's Albany, right?
That is correct. Yes, Albany is the capital of New York State. It even confuses some Americans because we know this, but it doesn't really make sense because New York is probably the most famous city in the whole country. But yeah, it is not a capital. We have, for a long time, New York has not been the capital of that area. So very important to point out. It doesn't always make sense. A lot of our capitals in the US don't technically seem to make sense. They're not always the most popular city. So very important to share. And speaking some additional fun facts that I think are really interesting. On the left in that picture, you'll see some famous Manhattan icons that you may have heard of. You have there, the Empire State Building, Broadway, Times Square. So you may not have known that the original name of New York City was actually New Amsterdam because Dutch settlers, right? So settlers from the Netherlands were the first to arrive in the area. That was back in 1624. For all of my European students and friends, for you, that doesn't sound very far away. For Americans, that history is, very, very long because our history is much shorter as a country. And then shortly after that, in 1644, the English took over. And so they renamed the city in the Duke of York's honor, right? So that was the evolution of the name. You'll see here more than 800 languages are spoken in New York City. So it is actually one of the most linguistically diverse cities in the world. It is a city with extreme diversity. You can find people from all over the world here speaking all different languages, which is often why we find our students to be very comfortable in New York. There are always communities that you can find to connect with, find your foods, find different brands or activities you like, because it is such a diverse place, all in a very small area. So 4 in 10 households speak a language other than English. It is not uncommon to be in New York hearing, dozens of different languages on the street, many different smells. So it's definitely in the US one of the most diverse places, which I think for international students is a really great benefit. So this chart, I know there's a lot of words here. I'll talk through it briefly. I think is really important because if you're considering, oh my gosh, I've seen New York in movies and TV and heard about it in music my whole life, I want to be there. I want every day to be walking those streets, and that's the college experience I want. These are just some things to help you figure out, is this the right feel for you? So on the left, you'll see New York City, and I put on the right how it compares to the suburbs and the country or more rural areas. So in the US, a suburb is going to be those neighborhoods surrounding cities. So they're not as urban and not as busy as a city. They're, more like, as we say, suburban, right? More houses, calmer, and then you go to the country or more rural, right? So way less businesses, far less people. And so what's right for you? Well, New York City has almost 9 million people in it, right? A lot of people, one of the largest cities in the world, right? So if you're someone who, wants a lot of action and wants to meet a lot of different people, it could be a great option for you. Of course, a suburb is going to have far less people than a city, and these people are going to be spread much farther apart. And then, of course, in the country or rural, you're going to meet far few people other than students on your campus, right? If you go to school in New York City, you are not just limited to the students at your school, right? You can go to different organizations and clubs that are in the area and meet people from around the world, all different ages, all different walks of life. If you go to a school that's very rural, right? For example, in Kansas, right? It's unlikely you're going to meet many people outside of the students at your school. Now, of course, there could be 40,000 students at your school, depending on the school. It doesn't mean that there won't be a lot of people, but you may be limited to just the students. Another thing to think about, you'll see, transportation. Most international students do not end up with cars when they're in the US. So you want to think about that. In New York City, you're going to have access to the most extensive public transportation, arguably, in the United States. So there are public subways, there are trains, there are buses, there are ride shares like Uber and Lyft, taxis, the famous yellow taxi you see. And that makes it really convenient for students to get around and also affordable, right? For example, right now the subway is only $2.75 in any direction. Whereas in the suburb, you won't have the subways and the trains as much, right? So you'll have some public buses, maybe Uber, and that'll be based on availability, and it could take much longer for it to get to you. And then, of course, in the country, you're probably going to have little to no public transportation. It'll be far less frequent, though your university may provide some of those experiences for you. New York, you're going to have access to some of the most famous events in the world, right? So any major sporting event, major concerts, museums, parks, attractions. All of that is going to be accessible to you by public transportation. So you can be in class during the day and you could decide, I want to go to the Taylor Swift concert. And so I'm going to take the subway and I'm going to be there tonight. Right? That is an option for students. Basically, every major musician or artist is going to come to New York City. So a good option if you want to explore things outside of the classroom. And of course, as opposed to a suburb in the country, you're going to need to travel farther and farther distances to get to those attractions, depending on the school you select, of course, right? There's a lot of diversity here. In New York City, you're going to have all of the shopping, the stores. There's going to be supermarkets and grocery stores basically on every city block. So a lot will be walkable. On your way home from class, you can run into the store and grab a few things. You won't always require getting into a car. Whereas a suburb or the country, you're definitely going to need public transportation. You won't be walking to your grocery stores or any convenience store. And finally, of course, New York City, it's urban, right? So you're not living on the beach. You're not living with looking at mountains. If that's something that's important to you every day, New York City may not be the best option. However, New York is really special because it has all of that very close. There are many, many beaches on Long Island that are very beautiful to go to. New York State has a lot of mountains and you can take the trains or the bus or rent a car to go upstate. So you're getting all of the urban activities day to day, and you'll maybe need to travel a little bit to get to some of those quieter areas, as opposed to the suburb of the country where maybe you're living in more of that nature, but need to travel to your attractions. So I know that was a lot of talking and a lot of information, but I think it's really important to think about, what do you want your day-to-day to look like at your school? Are you someone who wants to be going to museums every weekend? Are you someone who wants to go to American football games or American baseball games? Are those things that you want to be actively able to do via public transportation, shopping options? Or are you looking for, life on a lake, living in the mountains? Those are going to be very different schools you're going to choose. Quickly, I just want to talk about a few other things you would have access to if you decided to study in New York City. You may recognize this image. It's located in Manhattan. It's actually bigger than the European country of Monaco, right? We get about 42 million visitors here every year, and it's been in many, many movies, right? So Enchanted, Elf, Home Alone, right? Many examples. And that would be Central Park, right? So Central Park, if you study in New York City, you could go picnic there with your friends, between classes or on the weekends. It is a very popular destination and very beautiful, right in the middle of the city.
Can you give us like a time-wise, because you said that St. Francis College is in Brooklyn. How far is it? Because now it looks that it's, I think it's further than we think it is.
That's a good question. So it depends on how you decide to go. If you decide to take the subway, it could take you about 25 minutes maybe to get there on the subway. It's not too bad. Of course, it always depends on public transportation. Central Park is in, it's starts around it's in the 50s and 60s, right? So in Manhattan, the streets run pretty easily, right? They start low numbers and go to the high numbers. So it's pretty easy to track where you go. So you just need to go through Manhattan and up north a little bit to get there. And it's not too bad. There's a lot of subway connections to get there.
Cool, great.
The next image I wanted to point out, I talked to you at the beginning. This connects Brooklyn and Manhattan. These numbers are in feet, of course, so that's very American of us to do that, but it runs about 1,595 feet. At one point, it was the longest bridge in the world. And actually, elephants walked across this bridge in 1884. The circus marched 21 elephants across this bridge, which I find to be a fun fact, which you may have seen. It is the Brooklyn Bridge. Very popular place for people to walk and run, take photos. And as I said, only a 10-minute walk from our campus in St. Francis. So a very iconic icon in New York. And some of these brands you may recognize. These represent the sports teams in New York. So if you're interested in seeing hockey games, baseball games, basketball games, this would all be accessible to you as a student if you decided to study in New York City. The New York Knicks play at Madison Square Garden, for example. The Brooklyn Nets play very close to our campus at the Barclays Center. So if you're a basketball fan, could be an exciting thing to keep in mind if you decide to study in New York City. So I hope that gives you a nice overview of some of the benefits that you could experience if you decided to come and study in New York, and maybe what your day-to-day could look like, and what options you'd have available for you as a student. And so we are St. Francis College. We are one of the many options in New York City. So you probably have heard of many schools in the New York area. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my school so you know of one additional option you have if you're considering studying in New York City. So just a brief overview. We at SFC, we have over 70 undergraduate majors to choose from. So a lot of options across many different areas. I'll show you more about that later. We do have an honors program that eligible students can apply for, even international students. And of course, later in your educational career, we do have some graduate degree programs as well. Our population is around 2,600, slightly higher than that. So which you'll actually see in the US is a smaller school. I think it's a real benefit. We'll talk more about this later as well, because as you may remember, New York City has almost 9 million people. So you're not lacking for people. If you walk out on the street, you have many to connect with, meet. So in the classroom, this means that you're going to have only an average class size of around 18 students. And for every 16 students, there's one faculty member. So it means you're in a smaller community in the classroom, easier to meet your professors, make friends. And if you want more people and more community, just walk outside, and those almost 9 million people are waiting for you. We do have many international students who represent almost 80 countries, and you'll see from the map on the right, they come from all over the world. So now I'm showing you a map of kind of where we are. I'm going to show you our brand new campus that opened less than a year ago is right here. You may see where I hope you can see where I'm circling. So that's in an area called downtown Brooklyn. And our residence hall is in an area called Brooklyn Heights. So you can see it's right on this river, which means you have a beautiful view of the Manhattan skyline. Just as a point of reference, that Brooklyn Bridge that I pointed out, that's right here. So actually a very close, less than a 10-minute walk from our campus and from our residence hall. And here's the Statue of Liberty. So on your walk to school from the residence hall, you can walk away to see the Statue of Liberty. So very cool opportunity for students. A few other reference points I'll point out. We're very close, less than a 10-minute subway ride from the New York Stock Exchange. So students who are interested in studying finance, economics, we are less than a 10-minute ride from Wall Street, which is great for making connections in that area. So I just wanted to show you location-wise where we are. That way you have a better sense. And on the map that I showed you earlier, that's what you were seeing, right? So we are right around here, right on the river. and because we connect right into Manhattan. So that's just a little bit about our location. Here is our brand new campus. So these are some photos if you were to study at St. Francis of what you would see. On the bottom, you'll see some of our new spaces designed just for students. Those exist, in the hallways. So between classes, students will meet here to work on group work, assignments, just hang out waiting for their next class. On the top, on the right, you'll see the giant staircase. Students will sit there to have lunch, right? That's right near our cafeteria, and it's a big hangout spot for students in between classes. Our auditorium is here as well.
It almost looks like the steps that are on Times Square.
Yep, same feel, same idea, exactly. Yeah, and this down here is when you enter those two photos at the top. Those are the photos when you enter our building. So we have our own entrance, and students would be greeted with our St. Francis signs, and they would walk into their own space. And I did mention, of course, we have a residence hall. Our undergraduate students are not required to live on campus. So students who have family in the area are welcome to live with their family or find other accommodations. But students who are interested can live in our residence hall. You can see in the bottom photo that view of the Manhattan skyline. So really a beautiful location. There are some communal kitchens, which you'll see at the top. The space is pretty much brand new, which you can see from the photos. There is 24-hour security. I know when studying abroad, security is always a big concern. We do have 24-hour security at the residence hall. Students need to show their ID in order to swipe into the building. Of course, there's free Wi-Fi, kitchens available, and there's even a rooftop deck where our residence hall team will do events for the residents living on campus to build that community. Being, so far away from home, it's a good way to meet other people.
So I have a very practical question. When students apply and they get accepted to St. Francis College, do they also apply for accommodation on campus? Does it come hand in hand with the application, or, so that they don't miss a spot, basically? Because I can see how living with such a beautiful view of Manhattan skyline would be appealing. And I don't know how many spots are there. So when is that being sent?
That's a great question. So it is a separate process because we don't require students to live on campus. So a student would apply and be accepted. And once that student is accepted to St. Francis, if they want to move forward, they would need to pay a housing deposit. And that's how we know you're interested in housing. Once you've paid that housing deposit, our residence life team sends you the housing application, and they ask for some more information in order to get you secured in one of those housing spaces.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Great question. Definitely get that question a lot. So, of course, we hope that if you're choosing to get your degree in the United States, you are looking to study, not just, walk around the streets of New York City and go to concerts and games, which is also great, but you also hope that someone is getting a degree, right? So here are some of our majors that we offer. We offer many programs in business, of course, being so close to Wall Street. Our economics, finance, management programs are all very popular. Our biology and psychology programs are extremely popular programs as well. Of course, we have health sciences, many different like public health, health promotion and science, exercise and movement science. And then we have programs like political science or global studies, the United Nations for students who are interested in international relations is so close, right? It's based in New York City as well. So some of those programs, including history, those are popular, communications. I tell students who are interested in coming to New York City, almost every company and organization you can imagine has some sort of office located in the New York City area. So if you want to network, make acquaintances, volunteer, find internships, it doesn't really matter what you're studying, it's probably there. So something to keep in mind.
Mhm.
Um, and I know not maybe something many of the people on this call would be interested in quite yet, but we do also offer some graduate degree programs as well for students who are interested in continuing their degree at St. Francis.
I would maybe go one step back, not in the presentation, but in the
Mm.
process. But I do have students who are interested in summer schools or summer courses. Do you offer those?
Good question. So that really depends on the year. At this moment in time, we don't offer short programs or summer
Mhm.
schools. So
Mhm.
really what we offer is the 4-year undergraduate degree, a graduate degree, or students can study abroad with us, but that's
Mhm.
either one full semester or a gap
Mhm.
year, so 2
Mhm.
semesters.
Okay.
So those would be the most common short-term programs we do at this time.
So do you have actually international students who come to study at CFS? No, SFC, sorry. I messed up the word, SFC. And they go study abroad again somewhere else?
We do,
Oh,
yes.
cool.
We
Yeah.
do. So students who will come to us for 4 years but do a study abroad program somewhere else, that is definitely something that
Oh,
happens.
nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
so
Cool.
take
Okay.
advantage of as many opportunities as you can. I myself, I didn't mention this, I studied abroad when I was in school. I went to Europe myself. I went to Spain, and it was a life-changing experience for me.
Mhm.
It changed the trajectory of, what I wanted to do and who I had met and what I wanted to learn. So I think take advantage of any opportunity you can, even if it is just going abroad for one semester. Maybe hearing, ooh, studying abroad in New York for 4 years, maybe that's too much for me. Well, maybe you just want to study abroad one semester. We have
Mhm.
students who come and for one semester, students from Germany, from Spain, from France who say, I just want to, take some business courses or communications and marketing courses while I'm here and
Mhm.
feel what it's like to live in New York City for 4 months or 5 months. And
Mhm.
that's also an option. So
Oh,
getting
cool. Mhm.
creative is also great. Taking advantage of as many of the opportunities you have available, I think is really
Great.
important.
Yeah.
Um, so
No,
yeah, those
I
are,
agree with you. I completely agree with you because I studied in the Czech Republic and I had that exchange in the US and it changed my life. And it was not only an academic exchange, but I also did work and travel in Long Island in the Hamptons. And it was so amazing. So that's why I'm kind of encouraging these guys, start with the university, explore. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. And especially with so many undergraduate majors, they can choose almost from any possible, major that there are. So yeah.
exactly. And so if you were here and out on Long Island, you know how diverse New York can be. Like the beaches of the Hamptons are very different
Oh
than the
yeah.
urban life of New York City. So even if you think you know a place, there's so many new things to learn about and explore. So I think that
True.
that's so important to point out.
Yeah.
So yeah, so as we mentioned, many undergraduate majors to choose from, graduate opportunities as well. And a few things I just want to highlight. Um, as I mentioned at SFC, because we're a smaller school within New York, you're going to have those smaller class sizes, which gives you the opportunity to make actual close relationships with professors,
Mhm.
building that strong network of support and learning more about opportunities. Depends on the type of student you are, but at some of the bigger schools in the US with 20, 30, 40,000 students, right? That's a lot of competition. That's a lot of ways to get lost. Of course, they have great services as well. It's just going to be a very different experience. One is not better or worse, but you just need to know yourself and what you're looking for Here at SFC, you're never going to be in one of those lectures with 300 or 500 students in an auditorium. These are going to be smaller spaces. And you have to determine if that's what feels good for you and if that's what you're looking for. And of course, there are on and off-campus opportunities. This is one of our international students, Tadeo. He originally started as an undergraduate in business and just graduated with his graduate degree in business. He is from Brazil and ended up interning with Madison Square Garden. That's him on the floor of the basketball court of the New York Knicks. So he had some incredible opportunities having studied at St. Francis College, and he took advantage of both on-campus job opportunities as well as internships with famous companies and organizations in the New York area. Of course, we tell students, none of that is a guarantee, right? You know, he had to work really hard. He made those connections with professors and with outside organizations, but he took advantage of every opportunity he had in order to, you know, really make some great experiences for himself. And of course, I think before I end, I want to talk about cost because I know that's one of the biggest concerns and questions for students studying in the US. So I'll talk about the application process when we wrap up, but undergraduate students who apply to St. Francis and are accepted, if you're an international student, you automatically qualify for a scholarship from St. Francis College. If you're going to study in one of those STEM-like majors, such as finance, economics, psychology, you're going to automatically, in your acceptance letter, receive over $7,000 in tuition scholarship. So that means that your tuition and housing, so both to live and study in New York City, would be approximately $36,000 per year. Of course, students are eligible to work with payment plans and pay in installments. So that is an option. I know that's a concern for students. Of course, that would be an option. And if you're saying, well, actually, I'm more interested in studying, you know, history or political science. So anyone looking in the humanities or liberal arts, if they are accepted, automatically in that acceptance letter, qualify for a scholarship of over $8,000 in tuition scholarship. So that's going to bring your tuition and housing to approximately $35,000 per year to both live and study in New York City. So finally, what I will just highlight is how to apply to school. It's pretty simple. That would just ultimately be completing an online application and then submitting your transcripts, submitting your English proficiency, and that's it. We do not require letters of recommendation, and we do not require a personal essay or statement. So we're a pretty streamlined application that I think students appreciate. So I can also, you know, post that in the chat to you, and maybe you can share that out with students at the end as to what that link would look like. But that's just sfc.edu/apply. And submit your online application. We are still accepting students for our fall semester because we operate on rolling admissions. So if you're still looking for a place to go this fall, we're accepting applications through the end of July. And we're also starting to accept applications for our spring semester, which begins in January.
That's amazing. So I might have a question because sometimes I work with student athletes. Is that an opportunity at SFC?
So unfortunately, we do not have an athletic program. So we won't have any official student athlete opportunities moving forward. But of course, in New York, if you're interested in participating in any club or external, you know, extracurricular activity, it would be an option off campus.
Cool. And my last question, because you said that there are around 600 international students. Do you have any students from the Czech Republic?
We do. We have a couple of students.
Nice. So guys, you just heard. So you know who to look for. Her name is Emily Dorso. please get in touch with her. On the last slide, there will be our email addresses. And you can even, hopefully Emily will be able to connect you with those Czech students. You can ask about their experience, and, you can just chat in your native language if that's if that's easier for you.
Yes, I am happy to answer any questions. My email address is there, edorso@sfc.edu. If you're interested in learning more about the application process, if you have any questions about our academic programs, I'm happy to answer any questions. So send me an email and I will get back to you as soon as I can with as much information as I can provide you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you for walking us through everything. I have to say one thing, because I researched it on your website, and for you guys, the English language proficiency test, Duolingo is fine, and it's 95 points that you have to get, which is amazing. So I know that some of you are preparing for SATs and for TOEFL and so forth, and you are struggling with your essays, and I'm happy to help you, but you just heard what the requirements are here. So, and if you missed it, just like hit the replay button, because that sounded pretty amazing to me.
Yes, that's definitely important to note. We take many different English exams, which can all be found on our website as well. If you have questions about that, again, send me an email and I can send you all of the resources we have as you're making your decision. But we do definitely accept Duolingo with a minimum score of 95.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again. And guys, if you have any questions, please either reach out to us through email, or you can post your questions underneath the live stream, and I'll be happy to either answer or forward them to Emily. So thank you so much for joining. And Emily, sorry, you just took a breath.
No, I just wanted to thank you all for having me. I hope everyone has a great evening, and we hope to see you in New York City one of these days in the future.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.